Hi, and welcome to the Mixed Dandelions podcast, where we talk about being mixed, military, and moving on. Today's guest is James. I haven't seen James in a couple of decades. We first met at Scott Air Force Base. We went to Muscuda High School together. So welcome, James. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Of course. So let's just get started. Give us a little intro to yourself, and then also, how do you, what's your racial ethnic background? How do you self-identify? And then what other information you want to give?
So I am a father of five, a blended family. Me and my wife both had two kids when we got married, and then we had one together. So father of five, grandfather of 10, well, the 10th one's on the way. Let me see, military brat, which is why I'm part of this podcast. How do I identify racially? It's funny because on my birth certificate it says Negro. As I got older, I guess it switched from Negro to Black, and then now I think in the 90s it switched to African American. So Black African American, I really don't put too much weight on it, but that's how, if I was identified. I don't know if one is racial and one is ethnic, but I would say Black African American or American of African descent, I think is now what some folks are calling it now.
So how do you, though, like what terms, because I know some people do get offended with the terms Negro or with Black, and they prefer African American. Do you prefer one over the other?
So, I think Negro is kind of outdated.
Right, definitely.
So, and it's kind of still kind of close to the other words, so we're not going to go.
And we'll not say that word, no.
So I think that's probably why. So, but if somebody was, identify, if somebody was to call me, the Black guy or the African American guy, it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. Either or, I don't get offended by either.
I feel like that's kind of a generational thing too, because I think, like maybe we were the last generation that used the term Black, and then like today's generation more uses African American. And I'm just finding that more people like our age or older, they aren't really concerned, but then younger people do get offended with, they would prefer African American. So I am finding that to be, or even the same, with the term Negro, like our parents probably use that more, but that's still even a word that I don't think it's a bad word, but it's still a word I don't like saying still. But I think
it's weird. Yeah, because it's weird because just to see it on my birth certificate, it was like, oh wow, okay, And then
that's interesting.
I looked at my parents' birth certificate. Their birth certificate says color, which is
interesting.
Which is it's our history, So
it is, yes, and it's always changing and evolving, and hopefully for the better, right? As time goes on. We won't get into that though right now, because we'll digress, I think. But okay, well, so let's so you were an Air Force brat, right?
Yes, Air Force brat, yeah.
And then you said too, you spent how many years in the Army, right?
Yeah, I was 3 years. Yeah, so I'm a 3-year Army vet. Went in right after high school, graduated in 92, and literally a month later, graduated in May. In June, I was in boot camp. So then I spent 3 years in the regular Army, active duty. And then after I got out, I did another 5-6 years in the National Guard.
So what made you join the Army versus the Air Force?
Be honest, the Army recruiter got to me first.
Those Army recruiters.
He got to me the summer before my senior year. And I wasn't doing as well as I should have been doing in school. Not just breezing through, so, and I didn't want, so when he came to me with the Army College Fund and money for school and all that, I thought that could be a burden lifted off my parents. I go to Army 3 years, they'll pay for school in and out. So
They're relentless, huh?
Yeah, the Air Force recruit got to me first. It probably would have been Air Force, you know. So.
Was it at the school or was it like some? Because I remember at Mascuda one year, I remember they had like in the cafeteria, they had recruiters, like tables there.
I don't remember. I just know he was at my house one day. I'm not sure.
At your
It was kind of
house?
weird. Yeah,
And you
I
lived on
remember him
base,
when he
right?
came to my house. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
interesting.
So I'm not sure. It's
Oh,
so
that's interesting. It was so long ago.
I can't remember how it started, but and it was actually like, so I got recruited like the summer before my senior year. And then my brother, he was in college, dropped out of college. And so when he was staying with us at the time during my senior year, he kind of got scooped up by the same recruiter. So my brother went in like literally 2 or 3 months before I did. Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
he
He was a good recruiter then.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Okay, so let's see. You were Air Force brat, Army vet. What places did you live growing up? And then were you stationed where were you stationed as in the Army?
So it's interesting. So I know we share Okinawa connection. So
which I did not know.
Yeah, we kind of like, you know, traded places.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but actually, so I was born in California. I can't remember the Air Force base in San Bernardino. I was literally 3 months old before my dad got orders to go to Okinawa the first time.
Okay.
Where they couldn't take infants because there was some kind of water drought or shortage or something going on. So
interesting.
He got stationed over there for like a year. Me and my mom, we went to go stay with her family in Texas. So we stayed with him for like a year. Then my dad came back, and he got stationed in Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas. We stayed there for about, I want to say it's about, I was like 1 to like 3 or 4, 3 years. Then we moved to Germany. So Germany is actually at Ramstein Air Force Base. So we were there for about 3 years. I actually started school, kindergarten there in Germany at the Air Force Base. Then we moved back to Little Rock, Arkansas, Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas. Man, trying to remember the years, but I know we were there for, I want to say 81 or something around there. We got back to Little Rock Air Force Base in 81. And we stayed there for like maybe 5, 6 years. And then 1987, we got stationed in Okinawa, Japan. I was going into junior high. I was about, I was 7th grade. I was about halfway through 7th grade when I got stationed in Okinawa. We got stationed in Okinawa at Kadena. And then from Kadena to Scott Air Force Base, which is where my dad retired. You know, we set roots there.
So then do you remember much of Okinawa? I mean, you were at an age where you.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was watching the podcast with you and your sister, and I was around the same age as she was when you guys moved to Okinawa. So I remember a lot of the things you guys were talking about, the yakitori sticks, going out to Gate 2 shopping, later on, like before I left, other Gate 2 activities.
Which were all legal for us, right?
Hey. So, I remember a lot going, because when we first got there, we lived, we couldn't get into the Hershey TLF.
Right.
So we stayed right outside Gate 2. There's a hotel called Hotel Crown. I want to say it's called, or Crown Hotel. It was a little small rinky-dink hotel. And like, this was my first immersion into Okinawan culture and first time I had Asian food ever. So the fried rice, I just fell in love with the fried rice and the yakisoba. I don't know what the fried rice and the yakisoba. I just remember we could go down to the hotel restaurant and we could just order it, and it was on the military because we were just kind
of because you weren't in military.
TLQs, yeah, it was like our TLQ. So they basically the military paid for it. So we would go down there. Me and my brother, we would just order tons of this, Okinawa cuisine and just pig out, So.
And Gate 2 had delicious. Like they had all those little like bento stands where you could get the
Yeah,
yakitori sticks easy and
yeah,
cheap,
those
and
were,
they had like all that stuff there.
yeah, and I haven't had anything close to it since leaving. Anything
Oh
close.
yeah, no. Even when I took my husband back, like a lot has changed. And when I've been back twice, but 2, 3 years ago, I think 2019, right before COVID hit, the year before COVID hit, we went and my husband came with us. And even he like, yeah, like he was just like the food there. So, I mean, anytime you go anywhere, like
Yeah,
overseas, right?
yeah,
The food is always better. But like, even now he'll like talk about like, oh, well, the food over there, like the ramen and the soba and everything else, it's
yeah.
all like so much better over there.
It is. It is.
And yeah, I want to go back, but no, that's so crazy. So then you went to, let's talk about that for a little bit because I love talking about Okinawa. But you were on Kadena. Like we were originally stationed on Kadena, but my dad was E9 the second time we went. Because the first time, well, he was there in the late 60s. That's where he met my mom, and then they left. And then they went back in the mid 70s. So then I was born in 76. And I think that they had just gotten there or something. But and then we left in like, I think 80 after Karen was born 79, 80, then went back and I was 11th, 12th grade in a year after. So we were Kubasaki, but on Camp Foster, which is the Marine Corps base, because he couldn't find E9 housing. So then something that I learned was Kubasaki was 6th through 12th grade then at the time you were there. But I'm going to assume since you were Kadena, was there a junior high on Kadena Air Base?
Not at the time, yeah. So when we got there, it was literally 7th through 12th grade was Kadena High School.
Oh.
And then I think you had Bob Hope and Amelia Earhart elementary schools. So one was
Okay.
like third, and the other one was, kindergarten through second, and then Bob Hope was third through sixth, or vice versa. I can't remember.
Right.
It was the two elementary schools, and then if you were 7th grade, you automatically junior high. You went to Kadena High School, and it was 7th through 12th.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I can't remember because Karen then went to Leicester Middle School on the naval base, but I don't remember. Apparently, she was the first year that they did that. So that was 92, 93 school year. But I don't know if the Kadena kids went there. I know that like the kids from the Marine base and the Army base, Navy base went there.
I think eventually they did create a junior high. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure,
Right.
but I think some of the friends I did catch up with said they eventually did create a junior high because I guess the population of kids. But
Right.
I just remember it being a big high school and a lot of kids and very, very culturally diverse school. And I guess that is with like all DOD schools. But,
right. Well, that's one of the things, and I think that's like her and I would talk about, like when we left Okinawa, because you're on a small island. So I think that being American, living in Japan on a small island, being military brats, like that kind of takes over everything else, and everybody hung out with everybody. When you go out to the parks or the seawall or anything like that, like it didn't really matter, like people's race, ethnicity, even like I guess like what clique or group you would belong to.
You had your cliques and groups, but even within those cliques and groups, it was still multicultural diverse.
Yes, and like you still like interacted with other cliques and groups, so to speak, and it was just fun. Like everybody, I don't know. I always feel like Okinawa is just, and sometimes I don't know if it's because like my family is there. So, it's a part of me and my life, but I'm so glad we were there when I was older so that I could remember and experience a lot more. And, but no. So what were some of the things that you guys used to do when you lived there? Either by yourself or with your friends or as a family?
So as a family, I remember we used to go to the north side of the island to a resort. We went there every year.
Okay.
I guess this year it was a resort called Okuma.
Right, it's still there.
Is it still there? Yeah, we went there as a family with other families. We went up there, and I just remember having a blast up there. As far as friends, man, it was just, man, like I said, so before we got base housing, after we moved out of the hotel, we lived out in the economy. So we lived right outside, I want to say it was gate 5.
Okay.
Sure. But we lived in the economy, so we were in with the, Okinawa population. And it was other military families as well who lived out in the economy as well as we were waiting. Because my dad, we were waiting for a 4-bedroom housing because of me, my brother and sister. So he was on the list, and the housing list was, I don't know if it was like that when you guys were there, but the housing list was super long, super long. So so we lived out in the economy for about the first year we were there. And so for Okinawa, for me, it was literally like from 7th grade to 10th grade. So 7th grade is kind of, you're going into junior high, you're trying to figure out your identity. So it was kind of, I was making a real big pivot in my life, I guess, as far as friends and where I belong and who I belong to and all that. Because living out in the economy, I had one group of friends. And then when I moved on base, I had another group of friends. And then by the time I left, I was in another group of friends. So it was, it was all, it was different. It was different.
And then people move too. I find that because so, I mean, when I was high school, I had I got there 11th grade and I met a few friends. And then senior year, I had my group of friends. Then after graduation, people started separating. And then I ended up having a new group of friends. And yeah, that middle school age, like you said, with Karen, she had it's a very pivotal time in somebody's life. And then to add on like being overseas like that. So what was that? I mean, but you had lived in Germany, but Germany and Japan is quite different. So what were those like two experiences like being out of the US and being in different cultures, language?
So in Germany, it was different because I was young. I was got there at the age of 4. We left.
Okay.
Like 7. I still remember some things. I remember like my father taking us to the castles, driving on the Autobahn. I can't remember the river. I think it was the Rhine River. Remember the snow. Few friends here and there. It was, one thing I do remember is him taking us to some mall, and they had this gummy bear store. It was like gummy bears, anything that was gummy, they made it. And I will just remember and to this day, I'm in love with gummy bears. That's my favorite candy. My kids, matter of fact, they gave me a super big bag for Father's Day gift.
Oh.
But yeah, and that's one thing I do remember, him taking us there, and we got, I guess you weigh it by the pound, and I just remember coming out there with a big old bag of just all things gummy. And I remember the ice cream truck that they used to come through our neighborhood, because he made this spaghetti ice cream, which it wasn't spaghetti flavored. It was just he put different colors
like spaghetti.
Yeah, and then he would put it in the strainer and it would come out like spaghetti strings.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I remember that. I remember one thing about Germany. I remember being safe because as kindergarten, I was walking maybe at least half a mile to school with my friends.
Wow.
As kindergarten. We walk in groups, without my mom, or we would walk remember me and my brother walking to the pizzeria playing Space Invaders games. We're walking to the, it's not the youth center, what they call those? AYA, I think they called it. Walking, it's like a youth center on base.
Right,
we would walk there, we would walk there by ourselves. And here I am, kindergarten, 1st grade. My brother, he's 3 years older than me, so he's 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And us just friends, just kids hanging out playing, That's one thing I remember. And I also remember the schnitzel in Germany. I remember the schnitzel. Yeah.
That's funny because there's certain things when we lived in England, I was 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, but I remember a Jelly Belly store or like a jelly bean store where you just go in and it's just filled with jelly beans. And then the ice cream truck, I remember the ice cream truck coming by too, and the milkman. We had a milkman because we lived Lake Neat Village, so it was off base, but there was still a lot of American military that lived there. But the milkman and and I think that's true, like that safety that you have on base. It's very different than when you're off base because And I guess it's more of that, like it takes a village kind of thing. And then it's it's much more disciplined,
Very
I
much.
think, yeah. So I think that safety aspect, because even now as an adult and with my own kids, there's certain things, because my husband and I
Yeah.
grew up very differently. And so there's certain
Mhm.
things where I'm just like, well, I didn't have that growing up. Like that was not a thing in my schools. In high
Yeah.
school, I went to a Dodge high school. We didn't have fights every day. Like, and he grew up inner city Chicago. So it's very like, or when I even talk to friends over here who grew up either in Chicago or the suburbs of Chicago, it's a very different, like I guess, background for us. And as far as like safety, discipline, schools, and everything like that. So then when you moved to Okinawa, and so I guess when your dad told you guys were moving to Japan, like what do you remember, like what your initial reaction was, or what your thought process, or what you were expecting, or was it what you were expecting when you got there?
I was excited because I just knew we were going, like you said, I think in your podcast is like Okinawa, Japan. I didn't know there was a difference between the two. I just knew I'm going to Japan. I'll see you guys in about 3 years. I'll be back in 1990. I thought we were going back because at the time I had a lot of friends. I just started junior high school in Arkansas. So I thought, and I'm still friends with a lot of those guys today. So I just thought, okay, 3 years, I'll be back, guys. We're coming back, because that was like our longest duty station since being there in Little Rock for like two different my dad's two different stations twice. So literally like 9-10 years of my life was Arkansas. So it was just like, I'm going to Okinawa, guys, 3 years, I'll be back, business as usual. So it was just, being in the military, being a military brat. Okay, 3 years, it's time to up and go. Then 3 years there, I'll be back. And then getting there, like I said, just the culture shock. It's just the culture shock, especially living in the economy, living around Okinawans. Man, the nicest people, nicest people. Uh, um, sometimes I even go on Google Maps and I just try to find the old neighborhood that we lived on out there. And I see the same Mama-san store that's still there. That we used to go. I used to go get these 10 little chocolate donuts that were like 10 yen. And I would, every time when I pass by, I at least get about 3 or 4 of those. 10 about 3 chocolate donuts and then one of those freeze pops that you break in half in the middle. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was always, she knew I was coming. I had my 50 yen piece, so it was always the donuts and then one of those. So, yeah. And then, going down to the seawall, hanging out with friends, snorkeling out there. It was just, I love it because I'm like, me and my wife were so diverse because my wife, she's from Southern Illinois area in Cahokia. Until we moved to Dallas, she's never been outside
wow,
that
really?
area. And me being, being military brat, moving around, seeing different things and traveling a lot, I don't think I would have had that experience just if I was like her, if my family's just from one area and not moved around. So, I enjoyed it a lot. Okinawa was really, it was bittersweet because getting there, like my brother, he was in high school, so he was a big football star before we left Arkansas. So when we first got there, of course, the college opportunities are not as great there, especially with him being a football player. And I don't know how it was when you guys got there. So there's literally only
Kubasaki and Kadena,
yeah. There's only like 2 American high schools. So, and I think they broke them down into 4 different teams. I think we had the Islanders and the Buccaneers at Kadena, and then I can't remember at Kubasaki.
Yeah, Shogun and Samurai at Kubasaki.
Yeah.
And then Dragons and Panthers.
Yeah, Panthers. Yeah. So that was basically it for football. It was just those 4 teams. And then I guess they made an all-star team out of those 2 teams and they played, I guess Panthers versus the Dragons.
Dragons, yep.
So, and I think basketball was different though. I think basketball they had varsity but the Dragons and then the
I think they did the 2 JV and varsity.
Yeah.
So, that's funny.
So, but being that, so my brother, after like his last semester of his, I want to say that was his sophomore year, he went back stateside to finish school to get scholarships, and eventually did, got a football scholarship at University of Arkansas. So I was missing him those last 2 years that we were stationed there, because it was like
Okay.
all my buddies had older brothers who were his age.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was like, and there was that protection again. It was that protection that their brother provided them. That, oh, I'm sorry, the light kicked on.
No, that's
that
fine.
their brothers provided them that I was looking for in my brother, because it was sometimes, it was some areas where I was getting bullied, well, because I didn't have that protection from my brother.
Uh-huh.
My other friends, they had that protection because their brothers were in that clicked up. So, but other than that, that was like my second year going through that, and then my third year, it was transitioning into high school years. Like I said, that was my second transition there. So, got in with a new clique of friends and got into sports and things of that nature. And then all my high school life was going good. Then, you got orders. You go to Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. I'm like, man, I'm just getting in good here, because the first 2 years it was like, it was good, but it was like, I'm ready to go. And then the third year, I'm like, I'm getting in good. Then orders, you're going to Scott Air Force Base, Illinois. I'm like, that's when I was getting in good, yeah.
The sports thing is an interesting thing when I talk to my friend Co, like, because like when you're overseas and you're in the military, the opportunities, or at least when we were younger, for scholarships and stuff like that weren't really there. So it's like, what are your options then? Like, that's an interesting thing that I think I might like look into a little bit more. All right, let's start again. So okay, so we were talking about Okinawa, but then you moved to Scott Air Force Base. And again, you're at a pretty critical age, high school, right? Teenager. So how was that when you moved back? Were you happy to move back to the States? Did you have any kinds of like difficult transitions, or was it mostly positive?
It was, man, not knowing, moving to Scott Air Force Base, it was definitely a change, because I was in 10th grade, and it was around the late, 1989.
Right.
We moved 89, 90-ish time frame. And so that was a time frame of, I guess, the previous 3 years in Okinawa, you only hear about things that's going on in the States. So I heard about the crack, the gangs, and all that stuff. And then moving back, that was one of the fears. It was like, man, when they got gangs out there, or I heard things about St. Louis area, things of that nature, the drugs and all that, which, not to say that there wasn't any drugs going, but being that it was prevalent, and I'm not under that umbrella, that safety umbrella of the DOD schools, I'm gonna be going to school with, other civilian, children, or non-military children. So that was one of the concerns of just, okay, now I gotta fit in again, where am I going to land, and what things are going to happen. So, and then learning it, like Scott Air Force Base, we got here, we're driving, and it's way different than it looks now, because back then, where you see all those shopping centers and stores and all that, it was cornfields, nothing but cornfields as far as you can see. And I'm like, man, where are we, Dad? I'm like, wow.
You're like, this is not the St. Louis I thought we were gonna be.
Because you cross the bridge, you see downtown, you cross the bridge and you see nothing but cornfields. You see St. Louis, they say, oh, stay away from St. Louis. And then you see nothing but cornfields at the cornfields, and they're just like, man, how much corn does America eat, man? I mean, it was literally, cornfields at the corn. Even when we were on base, the base surrounded by cornfields. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when so my kids were right outside of Chicago, so my kids are pretty urban kids, and we go down there, especially now that my parents moved back down there, and I took it was just me and both my kids, my daughter and my son. And so we went down there, and my dad drove us around Scott Air Force Base, which has changed so much. Like our house isn't even there anymore because it's all brand new housing. And then we went by around Mascoutah, which, I mean, they've got some new houses, but other than that, not a whole lot's changed. But as we're driving around, I'm like, oh, and if you look to the left, here's a nice cornfield, and look to the right, and here's another cornfield. And my son is like, why are there so many cornfields? I was like, well, because people like corn, I guess. And then he's like, did you have to harvest the corn when you lived here? I'm like, no, like, why would I harvest the corn? That's what the farmers who own these cornfields are for. He's like, I don't know, there's just so many. Like, how many people does it take? And I was just like, I don't know, but that's not my problem.
Back in the 90s, he would even be even more shocked, because literally, like at Scott, where they built all the new housing, that was all cornfields. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, it's a lot of cornfields.
It was a culture shock. It was like, oh man. So now I'm in the country. So, then it was like, yeah, well, you living on base, you're gonna be going to Mascoutah High School. I'm like, what the hell is a Mascoutah? What's that? So yeah, it was a big difference. And then, going to Mascoutah, it was eye-opening. It was definitely eye-opening, culture-wise and racially wise. Being in that early 90s era, it was definitely a culture shock, especially coming out of a DOD where pretty much everybody got along.
Right.
And I think there was a big culture shock between the military kids in Mascoutah and then the local kids in Mascoutah. It was I'm be honest, it was racial tension and things, but for the most part, we survived it, or it was, we brushed it off or things of that nature. But it was just completely different than what I was used to. Like I said, coming out of Okinawa, even if you had your skater clique or your rap clique or your punk rocker clique, it was so many different ethnicities even within those groups that we still matched. But here it was, the lines were pretty much, I for lack of a better term, black and white, or military, non-military.
It was very much like, yeah. I remember, because I couldn't wait to leave Scott Air Force Base, and it wasn't just because, like being at Scott Air Force Base from Mascoutah, we had been there 4 years, and for me that was just like a year too long. So I was kind of just like ready to go. I couldn't wait. And when my dad got the orders to Okinawa, I was just like, okay, good, finally, let's go. And but I remember I was cleaning out and packing, I think, when I moved to Chicago, and there was like an old high school paper that I wrote in 11th or 12th grade for a history class. And I guess I wrote about some of the racial tensions at Mascoutah High School. And the teacher wrote something, like a comment on there about it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I guess as an adult, it was something that I didn't think of anymore. But as I'm like reading through it, I was just like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, I guess if I'm reading this, it sounds like, yeah, it was kind of, I was just like, I remember there was like one period of time where it was very like prevalent, and there was like issues. And I remember in the gym or the cafeteria or something, they had to keep people separated. And then there was some issues where, we would go to like games somewhere, basketball games, and they would call us like N lovers. And I'm just like, what? Like, it was such, it was for me, like, I was just like, this is insane. Like, I don't understand what the issue, like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and that's what it was. It was, especially if you played sports and you traveled, it was just not, it wasn't just Mascoutah per se.
Right.
It was the surrounding towns who were not so much used to having, I guess, people of different races in there, living in their towns. I remember Highland was one of the towns, even north up to Jerseyville, Roxana, going there. Remember playing basketball games and them calling me, because if you remember, I had the
high top, yes.
And I remember some of them guys, and the crowd's calling me Buckwheat. And then, oh, you remember Rod Johnson? They calling him Buckwheat Jr. because he had a high
Oh my
top.
goodness.
It was some of the racial things. It was like, and like I said, at that time, with the music we were listening to and this and that, it was just like, oh, it's time to turn on the militant black guy. And then some of that spilled over into the school in Mastuda. And it was, it was a powder cake, just about to be lit. Luckily, it didn't explode, but it was a lot of tension back then.
And I think because it is definitely a learned behavior, like I remember when, as a cheerleader, we'd go to I think it was in Highland where, we even had like a little girl came up to us and was like, why are you guys the N lovers? I was like, what? Like she was like 6 years old. And I'm like, this, yes. And as like you see, it's definitely a learned behavior. And not everybody down there is like that, we're not saying that, but that was just like, yes, like those were the experiences that you had. And but no, I think that, and thank God it didn't spill over into anything that could have been a lot worse at Mastuda. But
yeah, it was such a shock because I said growing up military, and you can attest to this too. We've seen interracial relationships. We've seen like my father and my mom, they're friends. Some of them have interracial relationships. Where white Asian friends, a white, married an Asian, or black married a Latino, black married a Filipino. So many combinations. I was so used to seeing interracial relationships. So it was nothing new for me. But then going there, it was just like, whoa, this is different. This is different. I'm actually experiencing firsthand racism. Like I said, we were under that protection, that umbrella of being a military vet, that we didn't see a lot of that. Even just in the next town over in Belleville, I didn't know how bad the racial tensions were in Belleville. I seen it was a documentary of 60 Minutes. They were talking about the highway that separates East St. Louis from Belleville. Just crossing that highway.
Oh wow!
In trouble, yeah. It was like, and that was around the time we were there, like I think they did that documentary in like 1990, 91. Yeah, but it was just
I have to look into that. Yeah, I know the GPS, every time I go down there, if we're going into the city, the GPS always sends us through East St. Louis. I was like, I'm like, I don't know where I'm going.
It's so weird.
I'm like, and this isn't Chicago. Like Chicago, there's so many more buildings, and no matter where you're going, homes or whatever, there's just a lot more buildings. And there, it's just like random side streets. And I was like, I have no clue where I'm going.
Yeah. So outside of that, Scott Air Force Base, man, that's home. That's out of all the places we were stationed, I would actually have to say that's home because that's where I met lifelong friends everywhere. But being that I graduated there, my other friends that I still hang with to this day, I think you had one on, Dr. Terrence Duncan. He's one I keep up with, but there's a close knit about 4 or 5 of us. And you probably know him, Leroy, Jeremy, Rod, Steve, and myself. And then there's also Tim Rainey. You remember Junior? We all still hang. Yeah, we still all hang to this day. So we're still close. So those are like my brothers. So out of Scott came that brotherhood. So that's why we call that home. Still, it's even though we've all moved out, some guys are still there, but even though a lot of us have moved away, that's still home for us because that's where we all formed our bond.
Well, yeah, because isn't like Rod left, right? And Steve, last I heard he was in Arizona. Is he still there?
Yeah.
And then Leroy left, I think.
Yeah, no, Leroy's still there. Leroy's
okay.
Maryville. He's in Maryville, like Collinsville. Junior and Tim are still there. Rod and Jaren are in Denver. And Steve is in Phoenix. And then Cleve. I remember Cleve and Caesar.
Yeah,
he's in Denver too. So every time I go out to Denver, I catch up with those guys and we have a blast. It's just like Mascuda 1990 all over again. It's just like we get to talking about each other, having fun, listening to music. It's just like we haven't grown up about one bit. So we still have
I should try to get either like all of you or at least like a big group of you on one episode, or at least get something like Leroy and Steve and some of them other people like individually, because I'm sure they could, because they're all mixed race too, right? Steve's Korean and Steve, Leroy's Afro-Latino, I think, Puerto Rican, and then Junior.
Steve is right Korean. Junior is Black and Thai. Leroy, Afro-Latino.
And then all of you together would just probably be a big old party, right?
Do you sure you want us all on one Zoom? You might hear some things. You got a mute button.
We have to get better at editing.
That'll be awesome. Because we're all on WhatsApp. We have our group chat, but then every once in a while we'll get a phone call going, and it's nostalgic. It takes you right back to the lunch table in Mascuda where we're just going off on each other. So
funny. Well, weren't you part of you and I don't remember who else was it, that the little singing group?
Hey, we're not gonna talk about that.
It was awesome though. Like when I listen to like Boys to Men, I still remember it, the talent show or something. I still think of that.
Who was that? It was me, William Rivera, Paul Whitfield.
Okay, yes.
And I can't remember. It was a white guy.
There was like 5 of you, I feel like. But yeah, I can't remember. I remembered you were in it, Paul was in it. And then another guy who was friends with Tony Herring, but I can't remember the guy's name. Was it William?
That was Will Rivera. That was Will Rivera, me, Paul. Oh, I can't remember the white guy's name, man.
I can't think of.
I just seen him on Facebook too, not too long ago. I can't think of his name. But yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, because when
we went first place.
I know, because you guys were awesome.
I don't know about that, but yeah, it
was good.
Those guys, they still rag me about that, man. Oh, they rag me about that. Oh, to this day.
It was good. You guys are good, so whatever. All right, so but you said your wife was from Southern Illinois. So was this when you guys moved to Dallas? Because yes, like you've moved around. So I'm sure moving around, like that move from Southern Illinois to Dallas wasn't as big of a thing for you. So then for her, how do you think with that difference in how you guys grew up and that, like, I guess that perception and the feelings of moving around and the coping of being able to move, just get up and move from one place to another, how was there, like, I guess, differences in how you guys dealt with that? Like, how did she feel about that? Was she kind of like on board, like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's go? Or
no, it was her anxiety was through the roof, because she was literally like, she was born in Memphis, Tennessee, but she moved up to East St. Louis when she was like 2 or 3, and then lived in Cahokia and Fairview Heights like all the way her whole life. Never, I don't think even traveled outside of maybe visiting Memphis. Going back to visit Memphis, but never really traveled outside of that St. Louis metro area. So for her anxiety was through the roof.
Yeah.
For me, it was a change for me as well, because outside of the time that I did in the military, I came back to the area. So literally from 95, 96, all the way up until we moved in 2016, those 20 years or so, I was there in Southern Illinois. So it was like, okay, job opportunity. We had already been talking about moving, wanting to move to Texas. We were trying to get to San Antonio, but because opportunity in Dallas opened up. And I talked to her about it, and she was like, okay, not knowing that she was wanting to move to Dallas, but I think it was just lip service at the time. But when the opportunity actually hit, her anxiety was through the roof. She's like, well, I don't know. And I had questions and this and that. Like, we'll be fine, after I got over my initial, like, okay, job opportunity, okay, we can do it. Let's go. But her, it was like, what about this? What about that? Questions, this and that, what about the kids? Or, because my daughter at the time was just starting high school, 9th grade. Or was she 9th grade? Yeah, she had just finished her 9th grade year. And so it was she really took it hard. So, because she had lived there her whole life.
Right.
And it's not like every 3 years she was getting her friends. She was getting her friends of almost, 13, 14 years, her whole life she knew. So it was really difficult for her transitioning. But, she adapted. And my wife, now she says she would move back to stay here alive. Yeah, she said she's here. She's a Texas girl now. So.
Well, I think just like winter alone. I mean, I know this past winter in Dallas had a couple rough days, but because I want to move, like I want to move somewhere that isn't snowing. And I mean, I would do Southern Illinois because I felt like that my parents are down there. So I was like, and at least just until, my youngest graduates high school. And then after that, like, let's move again. Like, but I moved around a lot. And like for my husband, it's harder. And even for my kids, like you said, like they've been here their whole life. And so they've got friends, like my son has friends that he's known since he was 3 years old. So yeah, like but I think when we grow up moving around, like it's easier for us to make that decision and to do it than for somebody, a partner that we have that didn't grow up like that. Because it is hard, it's difficult emotionally, physically, all that. But to me, it's like, oh yeah, it's hard, but it shouldn't stop you. Just do it and then figure it out. But I think sometimes I forget how, yes, it can be more difficult because I'm used to it.
Yeah, definitely can. Yeah, especially because it's with us being used to pulling roots up and sitting here in 3 years, and then their roots are a little bit more grounded because they've been there for so long. Like I said, we were leaving Arkansas, because like I said, about 10 years of my life was there in Arkansas.
Right.
I'm back to Arkansas and haven't been back since, so still got friends there and all that, I catch up with on Facebook. But yeah, that was kind of because when we were coming back from Okinawa, I could have swore we were coming at Little Rock, but it's just I'm like, what? No. Go back and get those chains. You gotta go back to Little Rock. But yeah.
That's funny. Well, so then I guess because I guess when your dad retired or left the military, if you stayed in the Scott Air Force Base area, that transition, how was that like? Would you say that was difficult, or would you say it was pretty easy because you were able to stay in the same place?
So he retired when I was in. So he retired when I was in the service. So when I literally, I want to say my second year in, that's when he retired. So I want to say he retired in '94. And so I was stationed in Georgia, Fort Stewart, Georgia. And so them, no, matter of fact, no, it was '95 when I got back. Matter of fact, no, he retired after I got back out of the military. Because I remember coming back, they were still on base. And then he put in his retirement papers, '95, that's when it was. So yeah, it was a transition for him and my mom. It was a huge transition because, like you said, you're no longer under that. Well, they're under the retirement umbrella. They still get, all the benefits of retirement. But now you're living off base. With that becomes other responsibilities, other duties, things in that.
Yeah. Well, I think anytime, anybody retires, that change in need and your routine and all of that changes too.
Yeah. So I think that was the biggest challenge for my dad, was just that change in routine of, okay, now my schedule went from, I know I was doing at 7, I knew I was doing at 10, I knew I was doing this and that. Now, okay, I got to find a new job, because even though, you get that retirement pay and all that, in this economy, that's just not enough.
My dad ended up doing a similar job that he did in the Air Force. They made it a civilian job, and that opened up, and he went. So he essentially retired twice from the same job. So what about for you? Like when you left the Army and the National Guard. So after you got out of the National Guard, how was that transition? Because then I mean, do you still have a military ID? Like, are you still able to get on base? Yeah. So how was that transition of like leaving that military community for you?
So it's two different things. So when I left active duty and I came back, it was similar, like to my dad. I was so used to what I was going to do every day. I knew Monday what we were doing. Tuesday, what we were doing. Wednesday, was fixing the trucks. Thursday, we were training. Friday was like a sort or like a fun day kind of thing. So it was just like every day was structured. You knew what you were doing
Mhm.
Monday through Friday, outside of if you were deployed or if you were training out in the field. But coming back, it was like, man. So now I had to transition from a structured military life. Now I'm going into civilian life. On top of that, I had my two kids, being a father, uh, and then also trying to be a full-time student. Uh, so it was a lot of transitions for me.
Yeah.
It, it was a struggle, but I pushed through. And that's one thing I credit to the military. My experience in the military, and as a military brat, is adapting to change. So I was able to push through and succeed and all that. And the National Guard was just the weekend, once a month, and then 2 weeks out of the year. So it wasn't really like a full-time military job. So it was just something I had to go one weekend every month and do. And now it was a big difference between training with the National Guard and training with active duty, because I'm coming out of the structured military, and everything is left, right, left. And then you go into National Guard, and I'm in there with guys who uh, have been in the National Guard since Vietnam days.
Oh, wow.
So it's just and they're so kicked back, laid back, and I'm like, what is this?
That's what I've heard. I'm gonna have to do like
Yeah,
talk to some National Guard, like active duty and who also did National Guard,
yeah,
because that was something my friend Co, like he like touched on too, just that
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, so it was like going in there. It's like, hold on, these guys are drinking in the field and this. You can't. I'm like, okay, I just go with the flow.
It's
Then
interesting.
yeah, but yeah, and so it was, I adapted. Being in the military, brat, and being in the military kind of prepared me. So for you to adapt to changes, things of that nature.
Interesting. Um, so I guess what the last two things to talk about, what lessons do you think you learned growing up in the military that still follow you or influence you today as an adult?
Uh, I would say tolerance. I have a high tolerance for. I would say, no, is tolerance the right word? Patience. I would say. I would say I have patience um, um, with people. Uh, Able to sit back and just look at the situation as a whole before jumping to conclusions, before jumping into things. Because being so coming from that military brat, having so many friends of different backgrounds and things of nature, to where when people say, "Oh, I don't see color," I know what they're saying. They're just saying it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, Growing up around a lot of people with different cultures, or different ethnic backgrounds and things of that nature, you're more accepting, and you're more tolerant. You kind of, if somebody says something, okay, well, I know what you really meant by it, thinking I'm not gonna
Right.
fly off and jump down your throat on it. So I would say patience and tolerance is something that's really been taught, just being in a culture diverse, you know, um, situations.
I think that could even go with other things, not even just like cultural diversity, but just any kind of situation, being more patient and tolerant about a certain situation and being able to step back and I guess
Yeah.
like looking at it and looking at it from different viewpoints, maybe and
Yep.
thinking out of the box a little bit.
Mhm.
So what advice would you give to other military brats?
Military brats now,
Mm-hmm.
it's so different, man, than when we grew up. I don't know, because they're able to keep in touch with everybody through social media and things of
They
that
are,
nature.
yes.
Uh, Back then, it was just like, oh, we had to, call, make long distance phone calls, or probably sneak. I think there was
Phone
a phone.
cards.
Yeah, it was actually it was funny because there was a phone when I got to Scott. There was a phone inside the rec center.
Yeah.
You could dial long distance without, without it was free, and I don't think if anybody knew about it. So I used to sneak over there and then call people,
Yeah.
and then, you'd be on the phone like, hey, hey,
I
hey,
think in the
what's
hospital, I think the hospital had one
Hey,
too.
the hospital had one too. Yeah, yeah, the hospital had one too. So yeah,
Oh, how funny.
or you was writing letters, because a lot of my friends back, because when in Okinawa, you didn't get the music until
6-7 months late. Yeah.
So they were back behind. So a lot of them was, hey man, send me a tape or send me a, it was tapes back then, man.
Or when people would come visit family in the States, they'd come back with the cassette or VHS, like, oh, watch this movie, watch this show, or watch this video or something.
Yeah, just having that one channel, the Far East Network. Man, that was horrible. Just having one station, but yeah, sending them videotapes of movies. Well, not necessarily movies, because you can buy those movies out there on Gate 2 Street.
The bootleg.
Music, yeah, that was one big thing. Yeah.
So I mean, would you say then just like to try to keep in touch and
I would say
as you can?
Yeah, I would say keep in touch, especially if you're at the end of your high school years. Those are the friendships that I have, that I met, that I made at Muscuda High. Those are like my lifelong brothers. Even friends that I had in Okinawa, I've caught up with them on Facebook, and I haven't caught up with them in person yet, but I still plan to do that. But those ones that I met at Muscuda, like Rod, Darren, Leroy, Steve, primarily those ones, man, we're like a brotherhood for life, and I love those guys, and my other friends like Terry, Peanut, I'm just calling him Peanut, Aaron, Aaron Smith, Torrance. I talked to him. Who else? Man, there's so many other friends there, man. Cleveland. Oh, shoot.
But it's great that you're able to have kept in touch with them, and that you guys are still close, and there's always somebody, like even when with the military, there's always somebody somewhere. So if you're visiting or on vacation, there's always, it's like, okay, who do I know that lives there, or at least lives near there? There's always somebody to talk to. Kenny, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he's in Florida?
Yeah, because he was around Cairns than me. I think he was in that.
I think it was a year older, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
He was somewhere between mine and Karen's, and we're 3 years apart. So he was somewhere between us two. But no, he was a sweetheart too. But okay, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No. What about your time in Okinawa? Maybe we have some friends that are kind of cross.
That's what I'm wondering now. If we have some mutual friends, we're gonna have to troll each other's friends list or something on Facebook. And then, well, there's like Facebook pages that are for Kadena Kubasaki. I'll have to like see. Yeah.
So I didn't know too many people at Kubasaki though.
Yeah, I mean, I knew some people just because I was a cheerleader, so I knew some of the kids. And then Karen talked to a lot of people from Kubasaki. Like, I think Alice Smith was there a long time. Co-arms. Well, no, he was Kubasaki. I knew a guy, Derek Jones. He was 2 years older than me. He went to Kadena High School, so he graduated. We got there in 92-ish. I think he graduated like 90, 91. Alec Canizales, I think he graduated in like 90, 91 from Kadena High School. I know a few people, I don't remember a whole lot, just because that's who we met while we were in the billeting on base. But yeah, we'll have to troll each other's friends list and see who we have the mutual friends. But all right, well then let me, thanks for coming on, James.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hopefully you're able to get yours started soon.
I am, and thanks for the tip, because I definitely was going to do something along this avenue as well, and I got some other topics, or maybe a different one I'm gonna do as well, based on grandpahood and fatherhood, things of that nature. But definitely thank you for this, man, because this is awesome.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
You took it and ran with it, because this is awesome. I love listening to you. I still got a couple other ones I got to listen to, but yeah, you've been doing a great job.
Thank you for listening. I know, and everybody can listen when you come out with your own podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it.